Within 30 days, I was at $750,000 in the hole, and I had sold everything. My senior year in high school, I bruised my spinal cord, and that was the end of my football career. I had to relearn to write. I was more than happy to go do the hardest possible thing I could find. I was fed to the wolves. Here's your guys, here's your teams, go make it happen.
How did you believe in yourself to do that?
My business is run like a family. Take care of the people that take care of you. If you can't trust your team, you're not going to get anywhere.
Welcome back to the Exclusive Mindset Podcast. My name is Nick Malinosky, and today we are here with special guest Robert Burrage. Today we are sitting down with someone who has built far more than extraordinary homes. He has built a company, a culture, a reputation, and one of the most respected luxury construction operations in South Florida. Robert Burrage is the founder and CEO of RWB Construction Management. He is a United States Marine Corps veteran and has spent approximately 25 years working in construction, management, and the development of some of the most spectacular estates in the country. Today, we are going to talk about Robert's journey, leadership, luxury construction, what the world's wealthiest homeowners are building today, the mistakes clients make, and how the next generation can enter the construction and development business. Robert, thank you for joining us on the Exclusive Mindset.
Thanks, Nick.
Happy to have you, brother.
You look beautiful.
Good to see you. All right, let's get started. Let's take this back to where it began. There was a life before construction. Let's start at the beginning, before RWB, before the extraordinary homes, and before becoming a leader in luxury construction. Who was Robert Burrage?
So, I mean, if you go back far enough to kind of start the journey, football was my priority in high school, and I had done very, very well and was excited to go off to college and play ball. In my senior year in high school, I bruised my spinal cord, and that was the end of my football career. Anyone that was looking at me no longer wanted to deal with that. It was a pretty significant injury. Had to relearn to write. The group that didn't care was the United States Marine Corps. And I was frustrated with the world. I was upset that I'd lost, my dream, my vision, what I really thought I wanted to do. And the recruiter was in the hallway waiting to talk to me, and I was more than happy to go do the hardest possible thing I could find. The blessing in the Marine Corps was that I built computer networks. I had an M16 that was assigned to me, but really I had a laptop that was assigned to me, and we were all over the world. Anything IT related that you could possibly think of in different countries and around the United States. But they trained me in Microsoft. They trained me in any system and anything you could possibly think of for 4 solid years. Got out of the Marine Corps. I had gone to the Marine Corps to pay for college. Started college. I think I was about a junior in college here at Everglades University down in Boca Raton, getting my construction management degree. And I'd come across an ad for a company called Delegate Construction Corporation. And I sent my resume over. It wasn't a huge resume. It had my background in IT from the Marine Corps. It had that I was going to school for construction management. Funny enough, out of 150 applicants, I was one of the few that got called in for an interview for that. And the God's honest truth is because my ex-wife worked at Victoria's Secrets, and the facsimile had Victoria's Secrets across the top of it. And Tim Dale was just interested in who the hell I was. Like, how is he getting a fax from Victoria's Secrets? So I interviewed with Tim Dale Construction Corporation. It was a almost 30-year business at that time. Tim was only high-end residential, very small firm, very detail-oriented. Sat with Tim, and Tim made me an offer, and it wasn't a very good offer, but I saw what they were doing. I saw a house on the north end of Palm Beach Island that they had been doing for a client for years, and the magnitude, the scale, the quality, the finishes, things I had just personally in my lifetime. I don't come from this world. I never did. Things I'd never understood, finishes that were just so far outside of what I thought to be like a reasonable price. And you just kept wandering through this house and further and further and further. And it was so massive and so incredible that when Tim made me that offer, even though it wasn't very lucrative, my immediate answer was yes.
That's amazing. So first of all, getting into the tech world, how did that play any role in this new position, or was it just timing? Was it just the fact that you applied for the job? Did that help you or give you any kind of advantage?
So the IT background from the Marine Corps, strongly promote the Marine Corps, by the way. The IT background actually was why Tim hired me. So when I got to Delegate Construction, they had 2 CPUs, they had 2 Chirp Nextel cell phones, and they had just brought on a program called Master Builder. And they were lost, didn't have a clue how to implement any of it. They were doing a relatively good job, but there was no technology. There's no systems. There was still a fax machine. There was still a typewriter, which I spent years trying to get rid of. But my real position, I was hired as a project manager, and I had guys that had been working for him for 20 years, working under me at 27 years old, which was incredibly difficult in and of itself. But my job was to create the systems, to create and bring them and the technology where they were at that time up to speed, and then keep them up to speed.
Wow. So basically the Marine Corps and that sort of responsibility you had there absolutely helped you get in the door there.
I think not only did it mature me to a place where I could be at that level, but it also gave me the background and the communication skills, the discipline. There's a lot of logic in IT. There's a lot of logic in construction.
In that first stage of that new construction job, what were you responsible for? Obviously, what you just mentioned, the IT world, but other than that, obviously you had to get involved with construction and management. How did that happen?
So I was fed to the wolves. Here's your guys, here's your teams, go make it happen. He had a couple bigger jobs where it was very time consuming for him. I don't think he had completely planned that correctly. And I ended up with some very large, sizable jobs as a very green project manager. Fortunately, again, I had some really good superintendents working for me that were long-term superintendents. But I came into this world where I had clients that are using multimeters to measure the grout lines on their 1,000-piece mosaic tile floor in their bathrooms. And it was a very new world to me. Yeah. Really, the leadership piece, management, everyone manages differently. I don't honestly think you can train leadership. I think you're either born a leader or you're not. I think you can manipulate people towards being a leader, but I think great leaders are just, that is their personality. That's their character. That's who they come from. That's who they are.
So you make this jump, you're in the game now, you're getting a little taste of the construction business. At what point do you say, okay, I'm going to take this on my own and actually jump into this wild, crazy, insane world?
So the God's honest truth is, at Dale Construction, I was there 12 years. So I worked for Tim Dale for the first 7 of that. The last 5 of that 12 years, I ran that business in its entirety. Tim was on the west coast of Florida, and I loved Tim to death. He was a great mentor, but it was time for him to retire. So we'd moved him to the west coast of Florida. I was running the business for 5 solid years. And the deal that we had for me to run the business in that time period, I did a great job. I had grown the business 2 or 3 times his biggest year ever in that period of time. I'd grown the team, I'd grown the infrastructure, the systems, and really it was time. As much as I loved him and as great of a mentor as he was, I didn't want to work under somebody else's name the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. And it was time to make it RWB Construction Management. That's
amazing. So that sounds like it's that next chapter. So as far as becoming that leader, what did that entail, and how scary was that process? And because it sounds like that was the transition where you just said, you know what, I'm going to open up my own firm and sort of take the reins here. So what was that like, sort of really becoming the leader? In one aspect, you're the leader under a big firm. So now you're the head of your own firm.
So I was a leader at Dale Construction, and that was great. But I think that the plus there, or the pro there, was that if I had done something wrong in that 5-year period of time, if I had steered the ship the wrong way, it was on somebody else. It really wasn't on me. Almost 8 years ago today, when I transferred to RWB, it was a very quick reckoning that if something went wrong, it was on me. And I'll give you an example. In the first 30 days of owning RWB, we had one client go flat broke, run out of money on a development. We had another client wire Dale Construction's old account, what was supposed to be wired to us. And within 30 days, I was $750,000 in the hole. And I had just paid to buy this business, and I had sold everything. I sold my house, my cars, my toys. I moved into a fully furnished lease in Boynton Beach with my family for the summer. I think it was, not that this is bad, but I think it was like we'd gone from 3,000 feet to 1,200 feet. Yeah. And it was, 4 kids, 2 people. It was a little tight.
So what made you, how did you believe in yourself to do that? I mean, that is to most people would say, that is an insane move with a whole family. I mean, did you just have that much conviction? Were you just like, now's my time? Because I think a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, that's the move right there. You got in the door, you knew you had what it takes, but how do you make that jump? I mean,
there were some things happening with the business that I ultimately acquired that left me uncomfortable for my clients, that left me uncomfortable for the employees that were killing themselves for me every day. And some things that I had control of the business, but a few items that I just did not have control of that could have been detrimental to the business. And I recognized that I needed to have control of those items to be able to promise my clients and completely believe in what I'm promising, to be able to promise the employee that's working 16 hours a day for me that they're going to have a job in a month. I needed it to be mine. I needed to know that I had full and sole control over it. Scary as hell. Don't get me wrong. But that really was what I needed, why I needed that transition to happen.
So as you know, there aren't many great leaders. I mean, there are a lot of incredibly sophisticated, talented people. Doesn't mean they could lead a team or manage. How do you become this manager? Was that from the Marine Corps? Was it from playing football? Something in your past helped you and prepared you for management? So
again, I think to some degree you're born with that level of leadership, but there definitely has been some roles that have been in the United States Marine Corps. Because I was in IT, I was a young, low-level enlisted guy working with high-level officers. And I learned, and this is going to sound horrible, but I learned how to manipulate people to do what I needed them to do for the betterment of the goal we were trying to achieve. Yeah. Does that make sense?
It sounds good.
Yeah. When little Lance Corporal Burrage is trying to get Major X to do X, Y, or Z because it's the right path, you can't just tell them this is what we should do, because they need to be the smarter person in the room. Yeah. I learned how to deal with people that were much higher than me in position, and I was that younger, low-level guy. I think in time, going through the different positions, the different things, whether it was the Marine Corps, Dale Construction, then RWB, I have this really unique position where I came from the absolute bottom. And at Dale Construction, when I first started there, I didn't have 2 pennies to rub together. And I remember what it was like with my 3rd son, and the doctor wouldn't even see my wife until I paid the deductible for the insurance. And Tim didn't really help me out that much. And I didn't have the money to deal with that. And I remember that feeling where I'm just killing myself for another person, for another business, and not being able to get by. And my team, and I will stand by this, is probably the best taken care of team, dollars position. We treat the business like a family in this entire region. Because I've lived the other side of it, because I understand that. We just had one of our employees, our controller, just was able to have a beautiful little girl. The first thing we did was give her a bonus.
Yeah.
It's the right thing to do. You take care of the people that take care of you. And I think if you're doing that, inherently you can lead even if you aren't a leader.
Yeah, I think when people think about a builder or the owner, they think about the builder and maybe the home. I think we get lost in the team behind it, and which leads to just what you were saying. How important is every role within that team, which you've pretty much just said.
Well, the difference between me and a lot of people also is I go on a job site. I don't care if it's a laborer, an electrician. I walk around, and some of these guys have known me for 20 years.
Yeah.
How's the family? How are you? I walk up and I shake their sweaty, dirty hands, and I talk to them for a couple of minutes. It's not that we're at different levels, because we're all at the same level. We're all trying to achieve the same goal. But I give the time to the people that, again, they're pouring into our business through their work to make us successful. So you have to spend that time with the people. You have to let them know that they are part of the entire process, not just an individual or a cog in the wheel. But it takes all of us to get this done. The other difference between me and most people is if I go on a job site and there's a water bottle on the ground, if there's a piece of trash on the ground, I'm stopping to pick that up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not there to be a dictator. I'm not. I won't make my guys do anything I won't do myself.
Yeah, I firmly believe in that as well. How, we've all been in business for a very long time now, and I never really understood when big companies or brands would talk about culture. How important is culture? And I feel like the sad thing about it is not everyone fits the culture behind a company. It's unfortunate because you want them to, because you believe it's the right thing. But how important is the culture within your company, and how do you maintain it, and how do you get everyone to be on the same page?
That couldn't be more of a broad question if you tried.
I know it's important.
I can speak to the culture of my business, right?
Yeah.
And I really can't speak to the culture of other businesses other than what I've seen pros and cons towards. My business is run like a family, and I know a lot of places say that, but I can truly and honestly say that is the way I run my business. Every year there's a large gathering for the entire team. We bring all the families together, and it's basically a field day for the kids. There's tons of RWB branding, and there's videos of the things that we've done so they can see what dad or mom have done within the organization. And we're building the branding and the culture, and we're spending the time. Another great example, we try to pick things that the kids and the families can do with us as a team. Yeah. We rented a movie theater at the Jupiter Stenolopolis not that long ago, and we did RWB Daddy Day. Yeah. So everybody got to bring their kids. We had the whole theater. They could get whatever they wanted, and we played Despicable Me. Yeah. And it's cheesy and it's corny. Most people would look at it like that. But really, my laborer, my superintendent, my executive project manager, all the kids together, understanding why dad's gone so long during the day, why mom's gone so long, why we're working so hard. I think part of my leadership in RWB Construction Management is pushing my team to grow. Mm-hmm. And to do that, you have to have the culture of people that will drink that Kool-Aid to be part of that. Yep. They have to believe that when the business does well, the individual does well. Yep. If they don't, they're not going to drink the Kool-Aid. Everything we do at RWB, every person that we have, there's a goal. There's a goal for them in their current position. There's a goal for them in where they're going, where they're going to get. And that goal is in position. That goal is in dollars. That goal is in bonus structure. Do your job. It's on the back of most of our shirts. Mm-hmm. And, I didn't even know it was Belichick's until I'd already stolen it. But do your job is on our trucks. It's on our shirts. It's that easy. As the individual, if you do your job and you do your job well, collectively, if we're doing it together, as a culture, we're going to grow together, and we can pour back into the individual when we're doing that.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, I think it's an unbelievable, culture and system you've created. You're essentially, I think when a lot of people think of builders, they're literally showing up and pouring concrete and, finishing a home, but you're also running a major business. How do you run the business within the business? And when did you learn to delegate? I've always had a problem with it. I'm getting better. I think a lot of leaders sometimes have problems with that. And, for me personally, over the last, I would say 10 years, it's been a main focus of mine. What has your experience been like with you sort of giving up the reins a little bit in certain departments and having your team control that business within the business? What kind of leadership do you allow your team to sort of run with?
Delegating and having a team that can support what you're doing, the business within the business, is so important. But learning to be able to do that and develop that and relinquish that control so that you can delegate, that you can lean on your team and count on your team, it's hard. It's been a very difficult, the last 2 or 3 years that has really happened in our business, because our business started to grow. We saw the opportunity. And as a new business, you have to have the capital for that growth. So we had the capital. It was the first time we were, able to really do that. We grew the team with the right people in the right places. And then we had to delegate and start letting them fail forward on their own. And there was a lot of things that we learned in that process. There's a lot of things as a leader that I learned in that process. I was very used to holding the reins very, very tight. And to your point, you can't do what I'm doing anymore if you don't have the right people in the right places, and you can't count on them. You can't trust them. If you can't trust your team, you're not going to get anywhere. And it's really funny in what we do and fun to watch, because we have a lot of subcontractors and a lot of people that we associate our business with that we're watching this happen, where the ownership of that business has never delegated, has never had a succession plan, has never had somebody that's been training under them to not only run the business, but then the field business. And these guys are getting older and older. It's becoming a concern as the general contractor in who we're working with, and what they're doing, who's going to be next in line.
Great point. As you're growing, and half these questions come from my own experiences, by the way, if you haven't picked up on it, but as you're growing and growing as a team, you're moving extremely fast, okay? With all your projects, moving at the speed of light. How do you maintain the standards that you've created with your team moving so fast? Because if you're not communicating and sort of having some sort of meeting or whatever you do, what is your trick to make sure everybody on that Monday, Tuesday, or whatever it is on the same page on a regular basis to keep everyone on the same page? Do you have any tricks of the trade that
Monday morning meetings?
Yeah. Okay.
Since I went from Delegate Construction to RWB, there's a Monday morning meeting, in person, full team. And what that is I go over generally what's going on in the business. Then we pass it around the room to that delegation point. I have 3 executive project managers. I have my chief technology officer, my controller. I want, whether you're a laborer, an assistant superintendent, a superintendent, a project manager, executive project manager, whatever your position in the business, I want you to have a general idea of what's going on in our business, so that we're interchangeable.
Yep.
So that if we have something happen, we can pivot and still be successful. I stand by, if your business is not doing a full team meeting in person on a weekly basis, make that one adjustment in your business, and I promise you're going to see a difference. Because when we had COVID and we had to go to Zoom,
Yeah.
and it wasn't just COVID, and a lot of people had personal things going on, there was a significant difference in the way my business operated from meeting digitally versus meeting in person. Because after we meet as a whole team every Monday, the individual teams then break off. Yeah. So where my executive project manager may not see a superintendent to the following week, they're sitting down for an extra 30 minutes. They're going over the game plan. They're looking at our reporting. They're looking at where we are. They're making sure all the boxes are checked, and we're moving the ball down the field.
And that's a non-negotiable for you.
Oh, that's
like. Yeah,
absolutely positively not.
You guys are branded very well. I think when people think about you and your company, there's this luxury brand, professionalism. You know, every one of your trucks has your name on it. You're very active on social media. Your marketing is excellent. It's all very consistent. Your charitable events are consistent. You're out in the community. How important in today's market is branding to you and your company?
To me and my company, it's one of the top things on the pyramid that have to be checked off and be proper. It needs to be correct. I had the opportunity to bring our chief technology officer, Wes, in 3.5, almost 4 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. And when we set him out, and we had gone through dozens of marketing companies and people building websites for us and trying to run our social media. And we tried to run our own social media when we first started because we couldn't afford anybody else. But I couldn't get a company that was consistent and would continue to have that branding and that messaging correct. You'd get somebody that would have some misspellings, some grammatical errors. You'd get people that leave things out of sentences. When we finally put it in-house, and I had a team that understood that everything within our business, every form, every invoice, every payment application, there's branding on every piece, every document, every truck, every shirt, every hat, everything that we have that is consistent, clean, crisp, and we're chasing a Rolls-Royce brand. Yeah. When I set the current website that we have out, I went through the entire Rolls-Royce website. We didn't copy it. Don't need any problems from that. Page by page, and looked at just how clean, how little text, what it looked like. And I went back to my team and I said, this is what I want in styling. And this is what I want styling, not just for our website, but then I want our social media. Then I want all of our documents. I want every bit of our business to follow this branding plan.
On that note, I think we're good, man. That was absolutely amazing. I just want to thank you so much for sharing. And I know you're going to help a lot of people with this. And thank you for allowing us to sort of jump into your world for a little bit. You didn't have to take the time to do this, but you did. And I really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nick.
I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you loved what you saw today, please subscribe. We have many more incredible guests to come.